If you've ever had something in your life that you wanted to change, but you actually had trouble shifting your behavior when you know you should, this is the video for you. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to actually change or even stop doing things that are no longer serving you. I think this is a very important subject because we all have things that we know we no longer want to engage in, but then how do we actually decide and follow through with those changes we want to make? There are stages to you both understanding your behavior and to changing your behavior, but also to healing the underlying unconscious belief that's actually making you engage in that behavior. So it's not just about change, it's about aligning our unconscious minds with the behavior that we already want to exhibit. The first stage people are usually at whenever they have a problem in their lives, is they're unaware that this is even a problem. So back when I was in high school, I used to play a lot of video games, and one of my favorite video games was a game called League of Legends. And when I played League of Legends, I would basically come back from school, play for at least like 5-6 hours a day, and then wake up the next day, do the same thing. So I was actually playing maybe 25-30 hours a week as if I was literally building a side hustle. But the way I convinced myself this was actually a good thing to do is I was telling myself, hey, I'm learning this game, I'm getting really good at it, I'm getting some recognition from the people in the forums and these friend groups I built. So I'm meeting some social needs, but also I can maybe one day become a streamer or something along that way. I had always had that entrepreneurial sense. But at that time, I didn't realize how much this behavior was hurting me. I also didn't realize that me playing those games was actually a way to avoid my emotions. It's a way to avoid the tension that was happening in my life. And obviously I was in high school, right? So we all have things that we've done in high school that maybe we wouldn't do today. But the reason I'm explaining this to you is becoming aware is the first step. And you're probably watching this video because now you are aware that there is something to shift in your behavior. So you may be in the stage of being conscious of the symptoms in your life, being conscious with ways in which this behavior is just not acceptable to you. It's not something you want to engage in. And this could be maybe you drink too much. This could be maybe you eat a lot of dessert. And it could even be subtle things. So for me, one of the more recent behaviors I've identified in myself was actually overworking. I've always been a very disciplined person, but I realize sometimes I work, not because there's work to do, but because there's actually other parts of my life and certain emotions that are coming up, like frustration or grief or anger, that I want to avoid feeling. So as a result of that, I channel that energy into work, which looks very productive from the outside, and this is where I have the symptom and I'm dealing with it in a productive way. And it can also be glorified, like there's guys like David Goggins, Jocko Willing, who have this mindset of staying hard, which is very useful. Doing hard things, doing things you don't want to do, are more useful than not doing them. However, if we get stuck on just being aware of the symptom and trying to attack it by force, what happens? Usually we burn out. This is why so many people struggle to change. This is why I think around 80-90% of the people who lose weight within 3 months actually end up gaining it back. Because they attack the symptom without identifying the underlying pattern of behavior. So if you're aware of the symptom, the next thing you ask yourself is what triggers this behavior? What makes me overeat? What makes me drink? What makes me, instead of face my emotions, actually work? So for a lot of people who drink, they may realize when I'm around this friend group, I tend to engage in these behaviors and just get carried away. And there's even cultures built around this. I mean, it's so interesting, right? Because if you look at alcohol, it's literally just poison we're putting into our body. And then it's marketed every single day, everywhere, associated with the idea of having fun. So some of these behaviors you're engaging in, they're not even your beliefs, they're beliefs you took away from your culture, from the society, from your parents. And when we start investigating how our own mind works, this is how we regain our power, because we're able to look at the trigger that happens right before the symptom. So, for you, this could be, hey, you're someone who wants to socialize, who wants to meet people. However, what happens is that belief comes up, and then you have another belief that says, I don't know if you're actually capable of doing this. And you start feeding into that, and then maybe you avoid those emotions by eating too much, by ordering some food. And this is not a pattern you want to be in. So you actually go back to the trigger and you go, when do I feel this need to socialize? Or when do I feel the need to avoid my desire to socialize? Because we can have feelings about our thoughts and then thoughts about our feelings. And things are very connected in that way. And just like if you're an engineer, you map out a process. Or if you're a software engineer, you have a program, and sometimes to debug you have to go line by line, stop the program, open up the debugger, and you go at line 34, this is where the problem is. And you can do the same thing with your own mind without taking it personally. So first you were unaware of the problem, then you became aware of the actual symptoms of what was coming up. Maybe you have some pain in your back because you sit too much, but maybe there's other things associated with that as well. And then you became aware of the trigger. Maybe that pain in your back isn't you just sitting too much, it's also there's a lot of emotional stress you carry you just haven't addressed or identified yet. And then you map out the process of how those things slowly feed into each other and how that looks like for you. So for example, I've been doing some work on this with myself the past week. And one thing that I've realized is when I felt socially disconnected, then I would work because work gave me a sense of meaning. At least the work I did, I'm very grateful to be able to do what I do. And then sometimes what would have been the behavior I would have liked to do at that time was actually to connect with my friends, because what happened if I tried to address my lack of social connection through work for too long was I would just burn out and I would feel even more disconnected. So it's like you can map out these cycles for yourself. And once you map them out, usually what you'll find is there was a belief that was formed that is driving this cycle. Then you can ask yourself, when was the first time I felt this to be true? So one of the examples that I have for you is when I was playing video games and I was overweight and outside of getting good grades from school, I was basically wasting my life. One of the things people around me constantly told me was, you have so much potential, you're an intelligent being, but you're just wasting your life. And I carried that belief up until recently, where I thought if I take a rest, that's lazy. Or if I struggle for a week, right? If I'm maybe unproductive compared to my standards for a week, then that's just me being lazy and that's unacceptable. And what that did is it actually caused me more burnout. And what I realized was I could go back to the situation, go back to the first time that I heard from someone and look at the data rather than internalize what they said. And the data was, at that point in my life, at that specific time, with those specific people, from the perception of the person looking at that situation, at that mental state I was in some ways I was not fulfilling my potential. And that's the lesson I can take from that. But just because I was being lazy at that time doesn't mean it's always lazy to take a rest. And you can do the same thing with things you want to improve on. A great example for people I worked with is a lot of the time, people who want to socialize, they may talk to one new person. And let's say this person was a bit caught up with what they were doing and maybe they weren't in the best mood. So then what they do is they respond in what's considered an unfriendly way. And what a lot of men do is they take this one instance and they don't talk to anyone new for 2 years because they take the trigger of this does not work and carry that forward instead of the lesson. So if you've had that problem, what you can do is go back to that specific situation and then actually look at what actually happened. I spoke to one person out of billions of people in the world at one specific time, at one specific place, at a time where I was dressed in one specific way, and then one specific event occurred. That's it. The rest of that story is just your mind's creation. And once you gather that data, you can become free of beliefs that you've carried for years. And as you become free of those beliefs that you've carried for years, it becomes easier to behave in ways that's aligned with your ideal self. So the way you stop doing things that no longer serve you isn't just about trying to control your behavior by force. That's just attacking the symptom, right? Which is good, which is productive. However, you also look at the underlying belief, where it came from, and then gather the data from that situation. You take responsibility and you ask yourself, how did I take this one event at one specific time with one specific group of people in one specific situation and turn that into such a heavy thing that I carry to run me, to run how I behave for the rest of my life. So once you get to that level of honesty with yourself, then it becomes relatively simple, sometimes easy, sometimes more challenging, to stop doing things that no longer serve you. So if you want to move towards this path, the first thing is understand where you are with different beliefs and different behaviors in your life. And secondly, that's the two. Secondly, map out processes of your mind. As you build more awareness, just like how our social relationships are built with time, as we put more awareness into our mental processes, just the awareness of how the behavior manifests itself will allow us to change our behavior. So that's my thoughts on this. If you have any comments, drop them down below. And thanks for watching.